Emile Durkheim lived from 1858 to 1917. He was a French sociologist. Durkheim was born April 15, 1858, in Epinal, part of the Lorraine region of France, which is in the northeast bordering Germany and Luxembourg. Durkheim was born into a devout Jewish family, which included a long line of Jewish rabbis. He began rabbinical school, but then decided not to follow in his family's tradition. Indeed, Durkheim became an atheist, but surprisingly, he maintained strong ties with his family and with the Jewish community in general. Many of his students and collaborators were Jewish, and this included some of his relatives. After leaving rabbinical school, Durkheim became interested in the scientific approach to society. However, this was problematic because at the time, universities in France did not have formal studies in the social sciences. So Durkheim wandered from one academic area to the next, trying to find one that fit him. He moved from humanities to psychology, and then on to philosophy and ethics. He eventually received his undergraduate degree in philosophy. Durkheim taught in the secondary schools in France for a short time. But he then left for Germany, where universities did have some studies in sociology. While studying in Germany, he published several articles, and those articles got him noticed in France. Consequently, in 1887, he was appointed as a professor at the University of Bordeaux. Then in 1902, Durkheim was appointed to the faculty of the prestigious Sorbonne in Paris. While he was not the first sociologist, it is fair to say that Durkheim was instrumental in establishing sociology as an academic discipline. Also, many cite Durkheim, along with W.E.B. Du Bois, Karl Marx, and Max Weber as the principal architects of what we now understand to be the social sciences. Perhaps Durkheim's central sociological question was, what holds a society together? He assumed that all of us individuals are egoists. That is, we're out for ourselves or our own self-interest. But he finds that societies have norms, beliefs, and values that overrule at least some of our egoism. He calls these norms, beliefs, and values collective consciousness. And he finds that this both forms and holds societies together. But then the question remains, from where this collective consciousness comes. Durkheim discussed religion in most of his writings. Nevertheless, the central work on the subject is The Elementary Forms of Religious Life, published in 1912. In it, he developed a theory of religion by comparing Aboriginal religion with religion in modern Western societies. In this work, Durkheim explains his focus on Aboriginal societies and religion. He argued that their lack of complexity allows one to see things that are missed when looking at more complex modern cultures and religions. A second reason for looking at indigenous cultures is that it challenges our assumptions about what we think is universal. For instance, Durkheim points out until the middle of the 19th century, Western people assumed that the father was essential to the family. We thought that there could not be a family organization that did not make paternal authority central. However, looking at indigenous cultures, we have found numerous cultures who do not organize the family in such a manner. Likewise, religion scholars long assumed that the idea of God was elemental to anything called religion. But again, when studying indigenous religions, scholars have found that there are examples where the concept of God was not part of the religion. Now let's move on to Durkheim's findings in this book. He argued that religion was the most fundamental social institution, and that it gave rise to other institutions. Religion, according to Durkheim, gave humanity its most substantial form of collective consciousness. Moreover, Durkheim argues that religion itself arose from sociological forces. In other words, religion has a cultural basis. In indigenous societies, he especially saw gatherings or festivals as giving rise to and reinforcing religious ideas. Think back to when you were a child, and then try to remember one gathering that was especially important to you. Perhaps it was an annual family reunion. Perhaps it was an annual family vacation. Perhaps it was summer camp, or perhaps something else. That experience brought you joy and brought the group that participated in it closer together and helped hold the group together throughout the year. Likewise, Durkheim argued that the sacred, which for him were religious objects, persons, and practices, were all ways of perpetuating the sense of community created at these gatherings or festivals. Durkheim then goes on to argue that the concept of God is based on the idea that there is something greater than humans. The same is true for religions, that there isn't a single high deity. There is still the idea that there is something greater than humans. And to be in relationship with this higher entity requires humans to do many actions. Moreover, the required actions are often not the ones that we would choose to do, absent the need to stay in communion with this higher power. The actions can be inconvenient and even involve sacrifice. They require that we put this higher interest above our own self-interest. Durkheim points out that for society to thrive and flourish, it requires individuals to put the interest of society above their own. This is one reason that Durkheim sees religion as foundational for other social institutions and obligations. Religion first developed the concept that individuals have obligations that override self-interest. In religion, these obligations become moral obligations. And then the same thing happens in other social institutions. Durkheim argues that religious practices serve the function of strengthening the ties between the believer and their higher power. Moreover, at the same time, religious practices strengthen the bonds attaching the individual to society. Durkheim and Marx agree that religion helps to uphold the norms and practices of society, or, put differently, the status quo. Marx sees this as a bad thing, as it means that religion then helps to prevent the needed revolution to overcome an unjust system. In contrast, Durkheim sees that religion's role in upholding society is a good thing, since, according to Durkheim, Nearly all great social institutions have been born in religious institutions. Religion is society's devotion to itself. Religious rituals glorify society. Also, religion reaffirms the ethical and social norms of society. Therefore, according to Durkheim, a religious person is more empowered to live the norms of society. However, Durkheim also worried that religion is becoming less important in the modern world. It is gradually being replaced by science, the power of the state, and an emphasis on the individual. Ironically, an atheist is concerned about the decreasing role of religion in modern society. Durkheim is a functionalist. He wants to know the social function of religion. He was not commenting on God or what is commonly called spirituality. Nevertheless, Durkheim is an atheist, and he does argue that religious practices and beliefs are a creation of society as opposed to originating from supernatural forces. However, many religious people have used his theories and not found them to be inconsistent with their faith. Religion is an important social institution. Moreover, social factors have shaped religion to a great degree. For instance, why was the Mass in Latin for centuries? Well, it was the common language at the time and place where the Church arose. Why is the Catholic Mass mostly done in local languages around the world today? Well, social factors led to that as well. Such a social understanding does not eliminate the possibility there is also an actual supernatural existence to which religion is directed. Emile Durkheim died of a stroke in 1917. He had never recovered from the trauma of the death of his son, who in 1915 had died while fighting in World War I.